Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Africa Changemakers Forum. I'm going to be your moderator for this evening. My name is Andiwo Bondo, Strategy and Policy Advisor at the Center for Research and Innovation in East Africa. I also provide technical support to Regional Education and Learning Initiative, Rally Africa. You can see from the invite and the posters about the new Africa Changemakers Forum, which I want to talk about briefly, and then introduce the agenda for the forum as I introduce the panelists. The Africa Changemakers Forum is a platform for new breed of changemakers in Africa, seeking to make meaningful political, economic, social, and cultural contribution in their local communities within the continent of Africa during and after this pandemic. The forum will serve as a collaborative learning network for young African innovators and activists who want to become agents and champions of positive change in their own ways and in their own different contexts. It will be relevant to those who believe it is time to engage beyond rhetoric, walk their various talks, embrace new ways of thinking, and work towards Africa's renaissance, as outlined in the AU's Agenda 2063 and continental sector strategies for Africa. For those who are ready to engage as change makers, the platform will provide them with regulated but open spaces for dialogue, opportunities to gain new knowledge, insights, and ideas, and also establishment or improvement of selected legacy or change projects across the region. Allow me to paraphrase the chair of the World Economic Forum, that this pandemic, though very disruptive in the world history, it provides a rare opportunity for us to reflect, reimagine, and redesign our continent. And with me today are four panelists ready to help us with this discussion. My first panelist is Dr. Wale Akinyemi, who is the Chief Transformation Officer at the Power Talks. Dr. Akinyemi will be leading talks on new thinking in the new session. And we have Jerry Kabeberi, who is Director, Chapter 4, Programs and Projects. And Jerry will be leading talks on purpose-driven champions. And then we have David Tanki, who is the CEO of LearnX Africa. And David will be talking, leading talks on owning your financial destiny. And then lastly, we have Irene Tindi, who is the team leader at Sport Invest Africa. Sport Invest Africa is the host of this forum. And Irene will be leading talks on building a lasting legacy. We intend to run up to 8:30 or shortly before, and to kick us off in the discussion, we'll be able to allow me to ask Dr. Wale to be able to have his opening. Sorry, not Dr. Wale. I think I'm going to start with Jerry, David, and Irene, and then when I come to Dr. Wale, he will be able to give his opening remarks and also make a presentation. Given the fact that he's not likely to stay with us the full length of the discussion. So allow me to invite Jerry for her open remarks for around 2 minutes, and then David will follow, and then Irene.
Thank you, Mr. Andiwo, and thank you to my fellow panelists and for Irene Tindi for organizing this. I'm very happy to be here because dreams need to be made into reality. And sometimes we just dream. So I'm happy that Irene's dreams and our dreams have found a meeting point. And as a result, we have this webinar today. I'll start by quoting the late Dr. Miles Monroe, a minister from the island of the Bahamas, who said, "It's a tragedy to live life not knowing why we are here on earth, and that success is indeed predictable." On November 7th, 1991, one of the greatest basketball players of all time announced that he was HIV positive, which forced him to retire as a player from the game of basketball, which he not only loved, but had excelled in. 29 years later, Evan Magic Johnson is worth over $600 million US, and he's one of the richest athletes in the world. As a purpose-driven champion, Magic Johnson realized that life was worth more than a game of basketball. And today, Magic Johnson has become an influencer multiplier to millions around the world. When he was a player, he was modeling himself, and people liked what they saw. Then he became a motivator and encouraged others through communication. He later became a mentor who helped others reach their potential, especially those with HIV, living with HIV. Today, Magic Johnson is a multiplier. He has become a positive influencer in the lives of others. By studying different people around the world, I have created tools in the form of 15 modules, which will assist me to become a multiplier influencer for Africa. I am inviting you to join me as we become and create champions for this continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Njeri, for that exciting introduction. Let's listen to David's introduction, then we can move to Irene before we call Dr. Wale to begin us off with his introduction plus the presentation. David, please.
Many thanks, Andiwo, for your moderation, and thanks, Irene, for organizing and coordinating this great program. I am a very strong believer in the opportunities that are available around Africa. Sometimes in 2006, 2007, the then British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, after the East African finance ministers had read their budgets, you know, he was on record saying that it is disturbing that a country that is 3 times the size of England could read a budget for its nation that is equivalent to the total amount of food that is wasted in England, or equivalent to the total amount of money that the British spend on buying DVDs. That is the kind of a budget that Tanzania had read at that time. So it is very true. And a couple of years later, I think 2009, 2010, I invited one British guy to come and run a program on my behalf. And one time, having a dinner with him at the Pan-African Hotel, he told me that, you know, it is disturbing that a whole continent of Africa, the way it is, can be performing in a very dismal manner. And then he mentioned a few things and said, you know, if Africa was to be submerged in water, then the rest of the world will not even feel it, because our contribution then, our economic contribution to the world, was actually less than 3%. And South Africa then, which was Africa's largest economy, now it is Nigeria. South Africa then, which was the largest African economy, contributed 1.8% to the total world economy, and it was followed by Egypt at 0.3%. And when you add up those, the whole of Africa combined was actually contributing 3%, which in finance, you can actually say it is immaterial. You can literally round it off to 0. So my take is that as people of Africa, God has blessed us in immeasurable ways, and we just need to style up and do it quickly so that we can take advantage of the many things that God has given to us for the good of our nations, for the good of our families, for the good of ourselves. There is a lot of wealth that is available in this continent, and I can't wait for us to be able to arise from slumber so that we can be able to sweat the many assets that God has given to us. So thank you very much. I'll be talking about owning your financial destiny in a few minutes, and I'll be excited to talk about a couple of things that will be able to help as many of us as will be participating in this forum today. Thank you very much.
Karibu sana. Thank you very much, David. Irene, your introductory remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Andiwo, and good evening, Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so excited that we've been able, as Sports Invest Africa, to bring this platform together so that we can start talking about the new Africa. You know, when COVID-19 pandemic happened, many of us were taken aback. We didn't know how to handle things. But then as time unfolded, it was so clear that this COVID-19 pandemic is a blessing in disguise, not only for individuals, but for this continent of Africa. Look at it this way. Africa is such a rich continent. The people, the diversity we have in Africa. Look at our music, look at the food. I mean, when you're talking of the people, you're talking of over 1.2 billion. Convert that to markets. That means that with the resources also that God has blessed us as a continent of Africa, we can go further. But the question is, why is Africa still being referred as a dark continent? What is it that we are not doing right as the African people? Who is supposed to make Africa be developed? And that is the conversation that I will engage in this evening to discuss how can we leave a lasting legacy? And in particularly, I'll be talking about the different seasons that Africa has experienced and is yet to experience, and reflecting these different legacies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene. I think allow me now, participants, to invite Dr. Wale to introduce his team and proceed to the presentation for another 7 to 8 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's such an honor, a privilege to be here. Irene, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I would like to thank my co-panelists, David and Jerry. Thank you so much. It's an honor to share this platform with you this evening. Those who know me, I normally, when I go to speak somewhere, they ask, how do you want to be introduced? I always say, just call me a passionate African, because I'm very passionate about our continent. And I remember when I was growing up, when I was a little kid, I used to hear so much about the potential of Africa. And I find it very sad that half a century later, we're still talking about Africa within the context of potential. I think that is a failure on its own, because in 1960, a lot of people may not be aware, China went through what was called the Great Famine of China. They had no food, and about 40 million people lost their lives. Things were so bad, they were, in some places, they were actually resorting to cannibalism. That was 1960 China. Today, when China sneezes, Africa catches a cold. When I read the biography of Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father of Singapore, he said that, you know, there were books on how to write books, write companies. There were no books on how to build nations. And so he was building from scratch. And look at where it is today. He said that in 1963, when at the time when places like Kenya were getting independence, they were teaching people how to use elevators in Singapore. They were moving, they were so backwards at a stage. They had what they called spittoons. That was when you're having a meeting, there's a bowl that's put there so you can spit into it. Now, so when you look at the trajectory, the growth trajectory, those are the things that make us unhappy. So what is the way forward then? I remember I launched out my career many years ago. Okay, there's some background noise coming. Oh, okay. I launched out my career many years ago at a place called the Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. My director general was a military general. And I remember one day we were having a conversation and he said that while in the corporate world, when your strategy does not work, you go back to the drawing board. But in the military, if your strategy does not work, you're a dead man. He said, so you need to begin to think of strategy like your life depends on it. And I think that is what we have not done. Irene mentioned the fact that COVID turned out to be a blessing in disguise for many people. But when you look at those who have taken advantage of COVID, what do they have in common? Let's compare the United States and South Korea, for instance. They had their first case on the same day. All right. Now, United States has crossed 100,000, 112,000 deaths, whereas South Korea was in about 260. Okay. Now, somebody may argue that, oh, you know, the population of the United States, well, I can give you the figures. It's 5 times more than that of South Korea. So that means if it were to be at par, then you just multiply the 260 by 5. It's still nowhere near the over 100,000 deaths. But when you look at the two approaches, one approached it as a public health issue, the other approached it as warfare. And that, I think, is a major difference. The nations that approached COVID purely as a public health issue, you find out that they are struggling. But those that saw it as this is military, this is war, a declaration of war against us, they embraced war thinking. And I believe strongly that that war mentality is crucial, not just for COVID, but for Africans as a whole. Number one, war is not fair. So we should stop expecting the world to treat us fairly. I think because we have always been on the receiving end, oh, we want people to spoon feed us, oh, we want people to give us concessions, oh, we want all this. That is part of the problem. All right. Then another thing, war cannot be benchmarked. You find out that Africa is the benchmarking capital of the world. We send our people to benchmark everything. Benchmark how to play football, benchmark how to, benchmark how to eat, for crying out loud. We benchmark everything. Now, as long as we are in that mode, we will not look. As long as we are copying others, we are benchmarking to copy, we can never be ahead. We will always be behind those that we are copying. And so the boldness to be authentic as Africans, the boldness to move from a consumer society to a production society, I think is very important. When you look at it, the pyramids in Egypt, for 3,800 years, the tallest man-made structures on the earth, who were they benchmarking? When you look at London Underground, 1863, the first of its kind, who were they benchmarking? When you look at in 1811, the master plan for Manhattan, New York was drawn. First of its kind, 1811. Who were they benchmarking? A master plan that included roads when people were riding horses. You see, that is we are contained in our thinking. And so we must realize this, that I think if this generation, if we don't make the change, I don't know if it will happen again, because we are moving into, we have actually moved into a new form of colonial rule, where we cannot make major decisions without the permission of China. But let me tell you where the key is. I wrote a book called Beyond Intelligence, The Simple Practice of Staying Relevant. That's my 18th book, because I'm very passionate about this Africa topic. Now listen, when you look at the number of researchers per million inhabitants in different nations, it will show you why we are the way we are. If we are not researching into the future, we will be stranded in the present. Listen, Israel has the highest number of researchers per 1 million inhabitants, with 8,250 researchers for every 1 million inhabitants. The United States has 4,217 researchers per every 1 million inhabitants. Japan has 5,328. South Korea has 6,856. Now let's come to Africa. So we've been in the 4,000, 5,000, 8,000 range. South Africa has 432 researchers per million inhabitants. Kenya has 225 researchers for every 1 million inhabitants. Nigeria has 38. Zambia has 40. Malawi has 48. So my conclusion is this: the key to our moving our continent forward, we need to begin to research, we need to begin to find solutions for our own problems, and we need to do it with a military mindset. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Wale, for those inciting remarks. You're indeed very passionate about Africa. I think what I would want to do is, if you allow, is to open it up briefly before you step out. We appreciate that you have to attend to another event. So maybe I can be asked 2 or 3 comments and questions from our participants before you take off. So I think participants, what we'll do is we are going to ask just a few of you to react to Dr. Wale's remarks, but you can also use the chat. There's a chat function to send in your comments, feedback, or questions.
Okay, there's a question from Rose Sang. I have a question. Rose Sang, I have a question. Yes. How can Africa not waste this crisis brought by COVID?
Okay, are you able to read a set of questions so that Dr. Wale can respond once? Maybe a set of the first 3 to 5 questions, and then we can be able to close that for now. We'll be able to have another open forum later.
Yes, reading the next question. Gideon Mutua says individual initiatives can only move so much. What do we do to have an engaging, progressive government?
Okay. Maybe you read the third one, and Dr. Terry can respond
then
to those.
There is Helen Sang. Dr. Wale, there's a lot of great ideas and policies that have been written but are gathering dust in some government shelves, somewhere instead of being implemented.
Irene, read Edward's question, please.
What bedevils Africa that we are unable to move an inch?
Okay. Dr. Wale, you can respond to those 4, maybe in the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. How do we take advantage of COVID? I think it's very, very simple. It's a brilliant opportunity because we have been forced. You see, I think it's brilliant. Before, if anybody got sick in Africa, you run to England, you run to America, now there's nowhere to run to. Now you have to look inwards. The chief of staff to the Nigerian president, he died of COVID. Why? There was nowhere to run to, because COVID has exposed our nakedness and our vulnerabilities. And so I think it is time for us, because you see, now with even borders not opened, and this is an opportunity for us to now spur local manufacturing, local industry, local things. Let's start where we are. Start small, think big, grow fast. So I think, and then do it, of course, like I said, with military mentality, whereby we know that our life depends on this. I believe that is very important. Somebody asked about how do we have progressive government and all that. And I think it's simple. It's the work that, you know, people on this panel are already doing. It's things like this, you know, because and I look at what is happening in the United States now. Anybody that says activism does not work, you just look at what is happening in the United States right now and look at the number of changes going on in different places. So I think we need to together, because what has happened, what has made this work is that before in the United States, you had different people fighting different fires. But for once, everybody has come together and say no to this, enough is enough. So I think that is important. We have so many brains, like somebody said, but let us now begin to put our efforts together with a common goal, a common purpose for the continent. And that's why I am a strong supporter of dialogues like this. And that's why I said, unfortunately, even if I'm not able to wait to the end because I have another session at 7:30, I run up for 5 sessions or so a day. The conversations are happening, you know, so let's keep them going. Many ideas, how do we move them from idea? Look, one of the things I have always believed in is that anybody in Africa who is waiting for something to be done by government is a dreamer. At the end of the day, it falls back to the individual. Government, anybody that's depending on government is dreaming across the continent because of that word I said, interests. Governments don't do things in Africa based on importance, based on necessity. It's done based on interests. So it's now left for you and I at our different spheres of influence to begin to make pocket-sized changes here and there, and then we can together build a movement. When the movement for transformation, like what is happening here, is strong enough, then we will command attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wale. Thank you for your time and for your ideas. If we receive any more questions, we will be able to forward them later. I think for now, members, as we release Dr. Wale to attend to his other session, allow me to welcome the other 3 panelists. We'll start with Njeri Kabeberi on purpose-driven champions, and then followed by David. So Njeri, you can take the next 5 to 7 minutes just to give key highlights of the issues you want to talk about, and then we'll be able to open it up for discussion after the 3 panelists have now talked on their teams. Welcome, Njeri.
Okay, thank you, Andiwo. I want to pick it up from where Dr. Wale left about governments, maybe corporates, maybe civil society organizations, and individuals. My feeling and my understanding right now is that we need to zero into the individuals. I think there are governments around Africa that have tried their bit, but there's something else that's missing. And that's why I have started this program on purpose-driven champions, because we need to build champions within the continent who are able to take responsibility for our inactions or our actions. But so far, that has not been the case in the positive way it should be. So I'll give a few stories here. And I'll start with, since the year 1677, when the sperm was discovered by a Dutch microbiologist, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, scientists have confirmed that approximately between 200 million and 500 million sperms are released during an ejaculation, and only one, you, wins the day. So I begin by saying, do not terminate your destiny. because no human being is an accident, and you are not an accident. You are a dimension on earth that has never been seen before, irrespective of whether you were born with an identical twin or a triplet. That is why your vision has to be unique, customized, distinctive, and authentic to your needs and ability. Let me come back to Magic Johnson. When he was playing basketball, his vision was to become one of the greatest basketball players of all times. But if he did not have a greater purpose than his vision of that time, HIV or being forced to early retirement from a game he loved so much would have killed him. Sticking to Magic Johnson again, I would argue that his mission in life is continuously being accomplished. Remember my topic, I had said I'd be talking about purpose, vision, and mission. Note that making it to the end of an assignment is more important than the assignment itself. Completing a mission is therefore the general assignment to complete one's purpose. A dear friend from Cameroon said to me on receiving this invite that he didn't know I was an international award-winning woman. And as I thought more about his comment, it came to mind that my best moments in life have been when I have been most authentic in my actions. It is when people have noticed me. So life is a journey. Each one of us is journeying. Some know exactly where they are headed. Others are guessing. And others still have absolutely no clue where they are headed or if they are heading anywhere. I'm here to share with you that no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, you have a chance to start dreaming again. You should not let anyone or any circumstance steal your dreams. Our very own Kenyan-born Professor Wangari Maathai lived her dreams to her last breath. I remember a few months before she passed on, I was in a meeting in her office and she said to a group of us, "I'm here and you know my name can open doors, use me." Little did we know she was living her last in this world, but she did not show it, instead choosing to contribute to her last breath. Living her dream and actualizing her purpose in life won her many accolades, including being the first African woman to become a Nobel laureate. A writer and motivational speaker, Dr. Wayne Dyer, wrote, "Who you are is the result of who you choose to process your life in this world and how it is presented to you. Nobody in this universe has the power nor the control to make you be any other way except the style you choose to be." Note, you choose to be. So everything we are, everything I am as Njerica Beberi, everything any panelist here is, and everything you are, you who's watching us and listening and wanting to ask questions, you have chosen that which you are today. An aunt of mine, Modoni Lekimani, is still writing books at the tender age of 95 years. Whenever I visit her, I am totally challenged by her resilience, commitment, energy, and focus at 95. Dr. Miles Monroe lived to the age of 60 years, by which time he had written and published 62 books. I have often wondered, how is this possible? Yet he was constantly on speaking tours around the world, as well as running the largest church in Bahamas and a multi-million-dollar business. How is it that he wrote more books than his years here on earth? Though both blind and deaf, Helen Keller, born on 27th June 1880, had the dream of one day going to college. She's best known for her writings, her pioneering work for people with disabilities, and her political activism, which landed her on the FBI watch list. As the result of illness at the age of 19 months, she became deaf and blind. Keller represents one of the most remarkable cases to date of a person who overcame severe disabilities to make outstanding contributions to society. She was the first ever blind and deaf person to graduate in the prestigious, and she graduated in a prestigious university, Radcliffe College in Cambridge, and the first woman to receive an honorary degree from Harvard University. I'm here to help you locate your purpose and potential, because at that stage, you shall become unstoppable to achieve your dreams. The examples I have given may have shown you that it does not matter what your background is, your age, or the challenges you are currently undergoing. The psalmist in the great book tells us, to humans belong the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the proper answer of the tongue. And further, in the same book, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Have you planned your life, or are you just passing by? Over.
Okay, thank you very much, Njeri, for those exciting remarks.
I want to come to what I wanted to talk about this evening. My fellow Africans, in building a lasting legacy, the big question comes to mind. Why is Africa still called an underdeveloped continent? Why is Africa so rich in resources, so rich in markets in terms of people, so rich in even the outputs? Still, we can't live our full potential. Why are we so good at lip service? And one of the things that came to mind is that in life, there are seasons. And that's what I want to talk about this evening, that there are 3 seasons that Africa has faced. And therefore, as I continue discussing the season, place yourself and see, in this season that we're in, is it your time to leave legacy? The first season or era is what I term as the independence era. In this era, our founding fathers were able to redeem Africa from the colonial regime. They were able to set the system of governance, and they were also able to establish the Organization of African Union, what we now have as AU. But what they wanted most was that we have an Africa which is united, his people is united, the purpose going forward is united, our economy is strong when we are united. But is that the case today? The likes, when you hear the names Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Jomo Kenyatta, Nelson Mandela, John Garang, and many others, these are the change makers who actually fought against the colonial barbaric regime. That's a legacy they left. Independence for the African nations. Now, who are the beneficiaries? Of course, the colonial masters, and many of them from the European communities, whom today you cannot match. And yet they came into Africa to pick resources in terms of human persons, human resource, who are slaves. They were picking our resources in terms of what we have as resource material. And it's happening today that we give away our resources as raw as it is, instead of giving it with value addition, for that to be able to bring more income into Africa and build Africa. So that season, the independence season, was determined by our forefathers. The second era or season is what I call the democratic era. In this era, we are seeing people who are fighting for the democratic space, the democratic champions, America leading the way. In fact, there are very many organizations that have put together indices to measure the level, the state of democracy in a nation. The African Union have the African peer review mechanism. The United Nations has something. We have something from Transparency International. There's the Economic the Economic Institute unit that is also measuring the state of democracy globally. What we see with this democratic era, they're measuring nations. In fact, there's a very good study in 2019 that was done by the Economic Institute unit. They measured the state of democracy for 165 countries, and out of these 165, 50 were African countries. They have put them into categories. You're either a full democracy, or you're a flow democracy, or a hybrid, or you're an authoritarian. Now, interesting enough, when you come back to Africa, it's only Mauritius that was determined as a full democracy. And it was ahead of United States and France. That means there's potential in Africa. Secondly, under the second category, where they're calling they're calling it the flawed democracy, this is where you find 17 African nations. You will find South Africa, Botswana, Ghana, and many others here, 17 of them. Under the hybrid, in the flawed there are 7, and then in the hybrid there are 17. So under the hybrid, these are most of the East African nations are Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Nigeria is here. There are 17 nations under the hybrid. But what is very interesting, out of the 50, half of these nations are authoritarian. Now, in this study, they also say that democracy is not progressing, but there's a decline in democracy. What does that tell us? That for change to happen in Africa, it's not a group that will make it, but there could be individuals who have to act for change to happen in Africa. Let's look at the third category and see if what I'm saying will qualify it. The third era is now what I'm calling the technological and innovation era. When we think technology, we think speed. And we've seen what technology has done in the Asian communities. Remember, Europe made it during the independence era. Americans were champion of the democracy era. And now, who's left behind? Of course, Africa. In the technological and innovation era, the 20th century saw China coming up. Japan has been there. And then now the Southeast Asia countries, the Singapore, the Thailands, the Malaysians, most of us Africans know this. We go to those countries to even buy goods and bring them. Some of our brothers and sisters are also studying in these areas. Now, during this technological era, when we're thinking of legacy, we are in this technological and innovation era in the 21st century. What we need to ask ourselves as Africans, for us to change the narrative, then what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? I want to remember Wangari Maathai, our very own Nobel laureate, who is being remembered for trees. She told of a story, the hummingbird. And in that story, the essence of the story was, you don't have to be so big to make the change. You can start in your own small way, just like what we've done as Sports Invest Africa to bring Africa together for the change makers to start in their small way, and we make a movement out of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene. Participants, if you had Dr. Wale, I think I carried 2 important messages that I want to summarize as we proceed to the next. That strategy, when your strategy does not work, you go back to the drawing board. And the strategy is life and death for anybody who wants to succeed. And then he also said that if you don't make the change happen, the change we desire may not happen in our lifetime. Then I think we're hearing from Njeri. one important or two key messages that I think I came out with. You might have come out with more, but let us change Africa's narrative together and work on your mission to the finish. Don't start something that you leave along the way. And who you are is who you choose to be. Locate your purpose and locate your mission. I think Irene has talked about what kind of a legacy you want to leave behind. Do you want to be a technology champion? What kind of innovation do you want to focus on? Do you want to be one of the democracy champions? And she concluded by saying, individual leadership is key to any change process.
Okay, I'll add some information, Andiwo, thank you. I just wanted to say, working within the continent has provoked me to move from working with governments to working with individuals. Because you travel 5 years, you take 5 years and you travel back to Cameroon or Senegal or South Africa or any different African country, and you find that things are exactly where they were, other than maybe a few new molds, but the people are exactly where they were. They have not moved, their mindset has not shifted. And that for me is a tragedy. That yes, you can have, like in Kenya, you have many beautiful malls that come up, but the individuals have not shifted their mindset. And therefore, you still have people working, operating at the average level. And we're not going to change this continent if we are all average. We have to move beyond average. We have to move to a much, much higher level for this continent to change. So, so my emphasis on individuals is because I've used almost 25 years of my life, and let me just say, maybe most of my adult life, trying to convince governments to give us our rights, trying to convince fellow civil society members that we need to fight for this right and we need to fight for the other, only to realize that the individuals are not changing. Kenya has one of the most beautiful constitutions today, and the reason why this company that I'm working for is called Chapter 4, it is recognizing the Bill of Rights, which is Chapter 4 of the Constitution of Kenya. But if I ask how many Kenyans are aware of that, first of all, that the Bill of Rights is under Chapter 4 and what those rights are, majority will not even know. So we fought so hard for a new constitution, but nobody's caring to enjoy those rights. Nobody even understands those rights. So there has to be a reciprocation of the individuals. The individuals have to start enjoying that which others have fought for. And I think Africans are not enjoying their lives as they should. They are not taking advantage of what even the governments have put forward or other people have fought for them.
Do we have any participants who is either chatting or raising any question or wanting to speak?
There's a chart here. With the leadership crisis facing most African countries, how can this critical aspect be passed and radical steps taken to advance economic growth? Leaders are autocratic. Why should Africa be subjected to European set benchmarks of everything? Call it development, democracy, science, and technology. Considering there is corruption that doesn't authorize change, why is the police still powerful to allow them enjoy as they should? What do you suggest if we have to counter past politicians and government bodies who still hold a lot of power in our African countries? What considerations are there to identify one's purpose in life? What areas of research are key in accomplishing strategies?
I will discuss generally because I didn't hear the questions very well. So I'll make a point. I'll make points on leadership crisis. I'll do something on corruption, and I'll speak something about purpose, because those are the three areas that I think I'm able to. The others, one, I see some of them could have been for Dr. Wale, and unfortunately, we have not had anything on finance, which is very unfortunate. I think on leadership crisis, without having really had the question, I just want to say that, coming back to my focus on individuals, and these individuals are African people living in this continent, I want to say that we don't have a leadership crisis. We, the people of Africa, have created a leadership crisis. We have chosen to elect people who do not deserve the positions that we have given them. We have chosen to take the shortcuts rather than looking for people of integrity. We have instead looked for people with quick money, cheap money, not even wanting to know where that money is from. So we in Africa, we the voters, have created the leadership crisis that exists in this country, in this continent. And it is from each and every country that we are talking about that has a crisis. It is the individuals. They have the power of the vote. That is the most powerful democratic power that any individual can carry. And we abuse it. We have abused that power. We have allowed ourselves to be misled. We have allowed ourselves. Remember, I was talking about every choice we make. It has been our choice. It has been our personal choice to be where we are as individuals. And therefore, the choices we make for our leadership are our personal choices. So it is wrong for us to sit there and complain when we are given an opportunity to elect between good leaders and bad leaders, and we pick the bad leaders. So we need, that's why we need to have champions for Africa who are brave enough and who can stand firm for this continent and say enough is enough and no to bad leadership. And the same with corruption. Many of our countries, we know who is corrupt. We are able to identify corruption through people's income. You can be able to tell that this person must have been corrupt because the income does not collaborate with the money that they earn. And yet, we allow these people to just go scot-free and continue and put them in positions of leadership, and where they continue to steal more from the ordinary citizens. So again, it is our problem as individuals, and that's why the individual must change. The individual in Africa must change. They must change their outlook, and they must change how they look at politics, how they look at the economy, and how they look at themselves, their own personal value. What is their value? And therefore, why do they allow things to become so bad? And finally, I'm just going to comment on purpose and just that one, because I think that one is my kind of pet subject right now, and nobody else maybe will be able to do it. I think if every individual found their purpose in life, because purpose is God-given, you have to find it from a space, from a particular space. You need to be in that space to find your purpose. If we found our purpose, we would reduce the mess in our continent. But because we haven't found our purpose, majority of us are those ones that are just passing by. Passing by, life is passing them by, and they're also passing through life. Majority of us are that way.
What we need to do as champions and as change makers, we need to take on Africa to the next level. You can see with all this technology, we would have, if we had done something as Africans, then we would have moved forward. So let us be encouraged as individuals and as African change makers. Let's not wait for the governments. Let us not wait for the European nations, the America, the China. It is time for Africans to take on the the mantle and we move on as change makers in making a difference in this beautiful continent of ours. Let your name be written in the books of history that you did something and changed Africa. We want to thank you so much for spending time with us and having this conversation going. We surely will be sharing more information on how we want to move forward. But sincerely, many apologies for all these technical hitches we've experienced this evening in this webinar. May God bless all of you, and may God bless Africa. Go out as champions and as change makers in your small way. Make a difference. God bless you.